Welcome to AI for Gen X, a video podcast where we discover new topics about AI. My name is Marisa Wilson, and I'd like to take you along on my training journey. Each week, we'll discover new topics. As Gen X, we've done this before, we've learned new technologies, and I'm excited to learn this next one with you. So grab the dog, head outside, and in 10-20 minutes, you'll be a little closer to understanding AI. Hi, welcome back. This is Marisa Wilson, and this is AI for Gen X. Today is Thursday, April 3rd, and we're going to talk about projects. I wanted to do this podcast yesterday, but had a realization that maybe on Earth Day, a podcast about AI, probably not a good idea. I get it. We have not figured that part out, and it does weigh heavy on my heart. So happy Earth Day. And understand that even though I talk about AI, I am very worried about the environment and AI's impact on that. Anyway, but the cat is out of the bag and we do need to understand it. You know, whether policy figures out a way to contain it, which I hope in the way it does, we still have to figure it out because the functionality has been previewed, is being used, and it would be very hard for it to go back. If it's not in the US, it's global. So today we are going to very briefly talk about what an agent is. We won't be talking about agents, but what it is. I will cover some information on projects. And then the third part, I was hoping to do a screen capture of my own setup so that you can physically see what I did for Claude settings and what I did for Claude projects. I think that's helpful. I will be very verbose and I will try to explain it. So if you're listening on a podcast, then hopefully you still can follow along. But I do recommend for that part getting on over to YouTube and seeing the screenshots. I think it helps visualize and you'll get it a little bit deeper. So my friend Darren, Darren's a really smart guy. He gets AI. He's not a beginner. So he's, knows more than 90% of the population. He's heard about agents. He didn't know what that was. And he was wanting to set something up for his own account. So he called me to see if I could help him out. And I think the call ideally would have been just show me how to do it. But when I got on a call with Darren, he has only used the Claude app on his phone. And for setup, etc., it's just better to also do it on the web. And then I just feel like before we get to the agent world, we need to step back a little bit. So again, quickly, what an agent is, an agentic technology has been around for a few years. Clunky for a bit, but in the last several months, it really has picked up. And it is the thing that people maybe worry about the most because it is the thing that could replace a lot of us. What it is normally in your chat bot, in your, asking a question, that is like step one. Agentic technology means that you give the tool a task and you say, I need it to. So for example, my husband yesterday had his annual LP call and he set up a demo of an agent they had set up, and that agent is helping to find startups. They launch the agent, he goes out, it scans. They've already given the parameters of where to scan, find companies, find who's in charge of them, looked at their LinkedIn, and this is all happening in the background. So it goes through the different steps. It's not somebody physically telling it, now go do this, now go do this. It is an entire process of opening files, going to websites, researching, documenting, maybe updating their CRM file, drafting the email. And so that at the end, all that has to be done is, somebody's already updated the CRM file and now somebody just has to approve those emails and get going. Vastly more, more efficient system. So you can imagine why people are jumping on board with it. A little bit what's happening though is maybe some people that should not be building agents or building agents. There's just a lot of issues that can happen if you're not doing them carefully. There's a lot of security issues and just workflow issues. And so I recommend highly that we take a step back and you really do understand more of the technology. So if you are going from prompt to agent, you need an extra step. You need an extra step of understanding, context. How do you give it context? And then you really have a really good foundation of how to properly set something as agentic as some of these things that are happening now. Now you can build very autonomous type things that aren't true agents, and I do that myself. because I am baby step. I would like to build, I have one agent in mind, but it is a very thought through process, and I will be tackling that. But so those are agents. Unfortunately, I don't think Darren got exactly what he wanted. The other thing that is happening with Darren is he's got a lot of private information that he has to be careful with. It's a finance type role, and he can't just be willy-nilly putting things into non-company facing AIs like Claude on his personal phone. They use Copilot. And I will do a podcast on this because I think this is happening a lot, where there's this shadow AI happening because companies may have given you a tool, but not to the range that you are maybe now capable of, or haven't trained you enough, or they haven't figured out their workflow or their processes either. And so there's a lot that has to happen. And I think what we also need to remember is this is moving fast. The technology is extremely, extremely powerful. Pretty much if you can open a web and do something on it, it can do that. And it can think, and it can do it a billion times faster than you can. But you have to understand a little bit of how it works. And I promise you, once you understand it a little bit more and you're playing with it, and maybe you're just taking small steps into it, it's going to function a lot better for you. So when I talked to Darren, I gave him my spiel, and then he just points his phone up to the camera and says, just show me where to click. And I think I realized, because this happens to me too, it's not an app. So these tools yes, they have an app, but it's not just an app. It is, what I told him was, it's a front door. It's a front door that you have to do a little bit of work in order for it to be something. Either you can build yourself a shack coming into that door, or you can build yourself like a family compound, a little island off of the coast of, I don't know, North Carolina type thing. But there's some work to do. If you didn't listen to the previous podcast or read any of the articles in those, you might want to go back, because we cover what the layers of setting up a good system, or understanding it, or having it work for you, what that entails. And first, we talked about prompting, right? That's pretty much where most of the people that are even using AI are at. They are getting onto ChatGPT and they're asking stuff, etc. Then we talked about memory, and because some people get confused on when they're chatting and they're continuing a conversation within the same session, or they leave and then they come back and they don't understand why the AI doesn't remember. So if that's unclear to you, go back and take a look at my memory podcast or my memory Substack article. That'll help you. And then what we are now tackling is a thing that they call context engineering. So you had heard of prompt engineering, but there's also this thing called context engineering. Yes, in a prompt, you could be like, act like my financial advisor, look at my budget and give me a budget, etc. But each time you're having to give it all this information. And again, if you look back at the previous podcast, you understand that stuff is going out to the data center, churning a bunch of stuff, coming back. It's important that we understand exactly how this flows so that we can create more efficient workflows, both for you and to get the answers that you want, and also for the environment so that we can be more efficient on that. And one of those ways is by using projects. So projects, both ChatGPT and Claude, they call them projects. In Gemini, it's more known as a gem, even though there's notebooks, but a little bit different. And in those, I think they made a mistake by putting in a folder as the icon, because especially for Gen X, I look at the folder and I'm like, oh, that's where I store my stuff. Like, no, they should have put a barrel or something, because you could have to think of it more as a container. If you are going to build a container, let's say you want to plan your trips. I did that podcast where I had a trip to March Madness, which was super fun. You can have a project where it be your travel agent project. And in that travel agent project, you can do several chats within that project. And then in the chat, you can even say, okay, I'm setting up this travel agent project and I want you to help me. My family and I, we like to do active vacations, and we tend to be in the summer, whatever you want to just ramble on about, and ask the tool. In this case, we're looking at Claude. ask it to help you come up with instructions, efficient instructions, so that every time you're in that project, it already knows information. You can upload different files. You build up all those files and you attach them to that project. And so now, anytime that you want to take a trip somewhere, you head on over to that project and you start that session there. You can always go back out and do a normal session. It's the same Claude, but by being in a project, you have a more efficient, context-rich container that will get you to the solution that you want, or the answers, or the functionality that you want. And so with that, I'm going to turn it off, and then we're going to do a demo online. So bear with me. Okay, we are going to go into my AI Gen X Claude account. All you do is Claude.ai. If you have the app, you can go through there, but online, you're going to have a lot more stuff that you can find. Then once you're in here, you might come in here and it looks like this. It has the chatbots window where you enter your information. And I want you to pay attention a little bit to what it's showing here. I keep saying this, but just AI is a very iterative, evolutionary technology, at least right now. They are constantly coming up with stuff. And what was there 2 weeks ago is going to be different than what is there 2 weeks from now. So always just pay attention and start digging around, clicking on stuff so you know what is available now to you. Sometimes they tell you with the releases, or you'll have a pop-up box, but always a good idea to just pay attention. So here you're on your chat box. Now, down on the bottom right corner is the model that they slated you for. I have a pro account, which is just a $20 a month account. And I'm not sure if the Max, etc., goes to a different model. But for general purposes, the Sonnet I have found has worked just as good as anything else. There's no need to try to get the best one, especially because it burns tokens. You're going to run out of your plans, and it also does more harm for the environment. So keeping it in check is a good thing. If you were going to do some deep research type thing, their latest deeper thinking model is Opus 4.7. The Opus 4.6, from what I'm doing, I'm finding it that I like it better than Opus 4.7. So again, just because it has a higher number doesn't necessarily mean that it's the better model. I know that you probably hate me saying that. Just tell me what it is. At least for now, it doesn't work that way. You kind of have to play with it, see how it goes. But the higher models do deeper reasoning. They cost more tokens, and they just burn through data center churn a lot more. But we are focused on the left-hand side. And what I'm showing you here is that you do have to do some sort of setup in order for the tool to help you be more productive. So now we're going to go over to the left-hand side. We're going to open up the sidebar. And in the sidebar, you're going to see new chat, search, and that means search within your chats. You can see all the list of chats, projects. We won't get to those just yet. Customize, which we can go ahead and click on right now. You can customize Claude by doing things like connectors and skills. I'm not going to cover skills today. Skills are going to be really important. There's going to be a whole new podcast on that. But for now, the connectors are kind of essential. I have it connected to my Canva, Gmail, Google Calendar, and my Google Drive. And by doing so, I am able to, in a chat prompt, say, summarize my emails. Or the other day, I could not find my son's basketball tournament information, and I couldn't even find it on Gmail. I did have Claude help me with this. I avoid doing that because obviously it churns a lot more in the data centers, but it is a way to make it more efficient. I can have it add stuff to my calendar. I could easily go into a chat and say, look at the email from this basketball tournament, put in my calendar the location with the address, what he has to wear, and what time we have to be there, and any details from that. And in the chat session, it'll review, okay, this is what I found. This is what you want me to do. Do you want me to go ahead and write it? Yes. I don't have it where it can send email because right now I'm just, working with it, trying to figure it out. But connectors, if you wanted to do something a little bit more than what you're used to, that's a huge one. But I'm going to go all the way down to the very bottom. There's a little moniker where you have your setting. I'm going to open that up, and then you're going to see a little bit more information. And here's, by the way, where you can find tutorials under Learn More. We're going to go up to the very top. There's a button called Settings. And in Settings, one really important thing that you should do is create instructions. You can work in a chat box asking the tool, hey, I'm going to be working with you. Let's build some instructions. And the prompt could be, I hate when you do M dashes and that type of thing. I want to keep it a little bit brief because instructions will get pulled up and read on every chat. And that's going to be different than when we go to projects. So if you want something specific that you want the tool to work with you in a certain way for however you are, you do want to go ahead and build some instructions. Also wanted to flag here, this here under settings is where you can look at your usage and see, oh, look, I reset. I was already getting to my max. I'm on the $20 pro account. So you can go to the usage and see where you're at. Oh, one more thing I want to mention is memory, because we talked about that in the last session and you were asking, where do I edit my memory? For Claude, it writes it all down. And here under settings, capabilities, memory, you can see what it is remembering. And I know for me, there's one thing that it keeps saying that I have, and I'm like, no, I don't have that. And I finally found it on this memory folder. I'm like, oh, that's where it's getting it. And so if you listened to that last podcast or read that last article, it's a good idea to just monthly, quarterly, at some point, put it on your calendar to clean up your memory. But I want to talk to you about projects. Okay, so as you can see, these projects, it looks like a folder and you might think this is where you're going to save stuff. No, so I'm going to go ahead and set up a new project. It seems deceive, right? I'm just going to say test and then test for the description. Go ahead and name it something that you're going to remember and put in a good description. And now I did create projects. Now what is happening is you are in a container. You have the ability to do multiple chats just like you would if you were outside of this. But here, what you can do is build instructions specific to this. The bottom line is the project area is where you contain the content. And this is where you're starting to get really good into context engineering. Because now you can probably understand you're giving it context. You're giving it instructions for that particular topic. You're giving it files and maybe working the memory within that project. I will show you my setup because it's a little bit insane. But what I did is I set up projects. This is for my AI Gen X account. I set up projects for office administrator, researcher, editor, sales and growth. And within those projects, and I went ahead and named them because why not? And I named them after Office, The Office, like the TV show, The Office characters. So mine are Jan is the office administrator, Jim is the researcher, Pam is the editor, I have Michael, sales and growth, and I think I have Dwight for analyst. Yeah, it's because it's fun. And so Jan, I kind of use a lot because that's where I go to say, hey, look at my emails, look at my calendar, let's structure my day. So she's the office administrator. And I worked with Claude to come up with good instructions. I said, this is what I want. This container is going to have this information. She's going to do this, etc. And the stuff that I have Jan do, and in fact, I make it fun. And within the chat, I'm like, hey, Jan, look at my email. But what I have Jan do is somewhat autonomous, but it is not an agent. It is not anything more than just a really well-structured, context-engineered project area. But it has been so effective for me because before I was doing projects that had to do, maybe I did a project for Substack and I did a project for my YouTube. But what I was finding is that I needed to have a flow. And so the thing that I would recommend is just to take a step back, rethink how you do things. How would you set this up? And it might take a little bit of iteration. Maybe you set up a project in one way and then you find yourself that you're constantly going out of it to go get some more stuff or pulling files into it that were in a different project and it's just a little bit messy. So it's just a matter of using it, understanding your own workflow and seeing how you can best make it fit for your lifestyle. I have thoroughly enjoyed this setup. I would say I was a B player when I was doing it the other way when I had YouTube and kind of a more folder-centric approach. This approach where I thought of them as if I had a fake staff, what exactly would I have them do? What information? I'm not going to give, maybe the researcher my brand guidelines because I'm just using Jim to go find topics for information I want. What Jim is going to know is what are the types of things that I like to research, who is my audience, and that type of thing. So that is it. I don't want to bog you down too much, but I highly recommend with any of this, I'm always saying just tinker, play around with it, spend some time, and the more you mold it to what you need, and the more you realize it's not going to be a finished product, it's going to continuously be iterative and evolving, you'll start to really enjoy it, and you'll start to think in that way. And once you start thinking and how it can work, and once you start using it, then you can go to those next level steps of building out your agents, etc. Hope you like that demo. Final thing I wanted to mention is that I know that a lot of people use Copilot. There's a notion of shadow AI that's happening, and that could be not a good thing, especially for corporations. Corporations are going to have to start understanding the capabilities of these tools. Maybe they've already given you a Copilot, but they haven't explained it what you can and can't do. I would just suggest, especially, this podcast is for the older generation. You might be in a position of having to decide what you do with the tool. You're going to need to hurry up and get up to date, because you're going to limit your people, and they're going to start doing things like shadow AI. You probably already know that, but and I know that there's a fire hose of things that companies are having to do, from security, from new workflows, new et cetera. And so much has to be almost reinvented. So absolutely sympathize with that. But do not contain your people. Have lunch and learns and ask how people are using it, or set up some time so that it is not a thing that you either hate, that everybody is against, or that somebody is really for and resentful that they can't move forward with it. It needs to be a combined conversation amongst all the different people that are at the different levels with AI. Otherwise, it just won't be as successful, I think. Anywho, what do I know? That's it. That's it for today. And thank you. We'll talk soon. Later.